I'm Leah Lane, an award-winning travel writer and author of Places I Remember, Tales, Truths, Delights from 100 Countries. On this podcast, we share conversations with travelers about fascinating destinations and memorable experiences around the world. Aesha Scott, the lively, outspoken, popular Chief Stew, is back for her 5th season of Bravo's biggest show, Below Deck Mediterranean, on Bravo. The New Zealand native quit her job working at a Kiwi fruit lab after college and moved to Antibes, France with her sister in search of adventure. She spent 5 years working aboard yachts before joining the Below Deck family, and we're delighted she's here. Welcome, Aesha, to Places I Remember.
Oh, thank you for having me. And that was a great intro.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you. Before we talk about some of your favorite places around the world, let's talk a little bit about the TV series you're on.
Yeah.
What obstacles did you have to overcome before becoming this glamorous globetrotting yachtie that you are?
I was having a think about this, and I'm very fortunate that I didn't really have any to overcome, because I've always been the kind of person where I follow my gut and I go after what I feel I should go after. And when you do that, the doors just open for you. And I'm very lucky that I thrive off change and excitement and pressure and just new things. And thanks to the show, that's what my life is full of. It's constantly different. There's always something fun. And I feel like I was just made for it, to be honest. I would say the only obstacle kind of would be trying to juggle that in my relationship. But I'm very lucky that Scott, my fiance, is very supportive and we're both very independent. So we manage it pretty well.
So you're engaged. It's pretty hard to be on a yacht and be engaged. How are you going to work that out when you're married?
Oh, I know. It's going to be tricky, but I think we've done pretty well so far. Thank goodness we've got modern technology. I can FaceTime him. Then the rest of the time I'm so busy, you just don't even think about anything.
Well, watching the show, I will say you are busy. You, depending on the crew, you are extremely busy. And on this season, you're pretty busy. Yeah, they're not the most helpful in many ways, but very interesting to watch it. Now, you've been yachting in the Med and down under in Australia. Where are your favorite areas?
Definitely the Mediterranean. You know, that's where I first flew into. I was based out of the south of France for years and years, and most of my yachting career has been in the Med. So that's definitely, for me, what I consider the home of yachting and my favorite place to do yachting. Obviously, the south of France. I love Barcelona. I love Italy. But for me, my favorite place that I've been on the boat was actually Croatia. And pulling into Dubrovnik and walking around that old city with the beautiful stone walls, and then cruising down the coast and going to Kruger National Park. And I just found that whole country fascinating.
It is. On episode 102, we just featured Croatia, and all of these places you mentioned are
awesome.
exceptional. Yeah, it's just like a jewel. You come into the
It is.
Yeah, it's fabulous.
And I feel like it's still very relaxed and old school, because you've got these places like the south of France, which are still charming and European, but it's like Gucci and Fendi and sports cars and all of that.
Sounds horrible.
I feel like, I'm just jealous because I can't afford them. But you go into Croatia and it still feels quite relaxed and old worldy, and like how the Mediterranean was. And I love that.
How much time do you get off? We don't see it, but do you get some time to enjoy it yourself besides?
Hardly. And that's why it was about my 3rd or 4th year of yachting, I started doing just temp work. So I would go and do like 2 or 3 weeks on a boat and then take a week off, and then 2 or 3 weeks and take a week off, because I got to that point and I realized, hey, I've been to all of these countries, but I've barely even seen them, because you pull up to the port, you've got guests on the whole time. You know, you'd get maybe a 2-hour lunch break. I remember running to a bicycle and I biked to that Kruger National Park, and then I cycled back in under 2 hours. So I would force myself to get out and see it, but it's all done very, very rushed.
It's rushed anyway, but with a crew on there, is it very different from what a normal yacht experience would be, having the crew and being filmed?
Oh, yes, it is, because I actually don't find it that different having the cameras on there because I just pretend they don't exist. So they don't really bother me at all. But I think what's so weird is for the show, they're obviously doing 9 charters because they want like lots of different groups of people and they want us to like the pressure of reprovisioning and changing the fridges and all of this constant change. Whereas on a regular yacht, I suppose, the same guest will be on for 2 weeks. So you only have to order and change the fridges and get used to a schedule every 2 weeks rather than every 3 days.
Interesting. I
But
didn't
that's
realize
what's
that.
so hard about it. Yeah.
Well, we love that part. I love to see the provisions come on.
I know. You guys love that part. That
Best
part
part.
kills me.
Best part. Now you have a new bunch of guests about every week, or even faster than that. As you mentioned, what's the worst group that you remember? Why? I mean, there've been so many terrible guests on there, I think.
The guest that I've not enjoyed the most, it was the second season of Down Under when it was like Carmen, Alicia, Brandon, and that whole group, because they were just at each other's throats the whole time. Like literally, they didn't show like heaps of it, but they were literally walking around the boat screaming at each other, and I'm having to stand in the middle like, please, you go over there and you go over there. And it's just not like a lovely environment to be working in. I think as well, just overall, the groups that I hate, which tends to be the people that are on a yacht for the first time and they're overexcited, they order their next cocktail when they've just started drinking the one that you've given them. And so you're putting down like 8 drinks, and then the moment you put them down, they order more. So it's just this endless back and forth. You can't do anything else. And then my heart gets so broken when I'm going and clearing their glasses, and every single one of them is half full of the most expensive tequila and all these beautiful ingredients, and it feels so wasteful. And we can't drink them because we're working.
I know. I was going to say,
I need to start pouring them into a slop bucket.
Now you create a lot of drinks. I've heard you created one. What is this drink that?
Oh, yes. So I have created an alcoholic coconut water called Drop, and it's just launched in Australia, which is so, so exciting. So if anyone is listening from Australia, please go and try it for yourselves.
Interesting, because I drink coconut water and I can imagine a little bit of something in there wouldn't be bad. What is in there?
So I'm working with a brewery. So it's the same way that you make seltzers. It's a neutral brewed alcohol. So it's not like mixed with vodka or anything. It's just brewed, mixed with a brewed alcohol. So yeah, it's got a bit of a punch, but that's what I wanted,
Like a hard cider. Yes, delicious.
Yeah, exactly. And you're hydrating at the same time.
You're very helpful. You're always so helpful, Aesha. Okay.
Thank you.
So now, what's your favorite part of being a chief stew?
Oh, my favorite part, I just really enjoy being in control of the guest experience because I take my work so seriously, and I'm very conscious of the fact that these guests are paying thousands and thousands of dollars to be on board and have this experience.
Can I ask you how much exactly?
I don't know if I'm allowed to say how much. I mean, I don't even know exactly, but it's a lot of money.
A lot of money.
Even the guests that are coming on the show are paying a lot of money. And I think for someone that is so conscious of that, I like being the one that's in control of knowing that all the cogs are turning as they should.
How much sleep do you get?
Oh my gosh, none. Like by the time and I tend to not take many breaks because I don't trust anyone. So, you're working 16 hours running nonstop. And then by the time you wind down from that and then get up in time to like do a full face so that I look nice for the cameras, it's like I'm only really getting 4 to 5 hours sleep a night for 2 months.
So you burn out. I mean, how can you do that for years and years? I mean,
well, yeah, that's why stews tend to have kind of like a 8-year lifespan because it just gets too much.
It is, but you've got a few years left. Yay!
Yes, exactly. I definitely do.
Let me ask you about tips. Every week we see a big envelope full of money. Are they told what to give you within, a range, or how does that work with tipping? I'm always curious.
Not just on the show, but in all yachting. I think this kind of standard is about 10%, maybe. Okay. I think that's kind of the minimum that's expected, although you should never expect. We tend to get on the show in all my time that I've done it, the average would be about 1,800 US or euros, depending where I am, per 48-hour
That's not
guest
bad.
trip. So
That's
to me,
not bad.
I'm like, yeah, baby. Oh,
That's not
yeah,
bad.
that's
I saw
great.
one guy stiffed you. He was a second timer, and he left a note. It's horrible.
Oh,
Yeah,
no.
yeah,
I mean,
terrible.
even if such a tricky one, because it's like you shouldn't expect, but then even if you aren't totally happy with it, it's just recognizing that we've all been busting our asses
You
to
have,
try and give you the best possible.
you have, and we can see that.
I was so blown away by the first group of guests that we had this season, those young TikTokers. And remember, we had no wine, we had
Yes,
like none of their provisions, and they still left us a wonderful tip. And
yeah,
they really didn't have to do that. I thought that was
yeah.
wonderful.
They were great. They were
Yeah,
very grateful and very sweet. Yeah, I like them
yes.
too. Well, you've traveled all over the world. You've said some of your favorite places. You've mentioned the south of France and Croatia. What are a couple of others? You mentioned to me South Africa earlier. What do you love about South Africa?
I went to South Africa last year when I did I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, the Australian version. And we were based in Kruger National Park, which was just absolutely stunning. And when I say I love South Africa, I mean it is a limited statement because I was just in Kruger and Hoedspruit. Like I didn't have the opportunity to go down to Cape Town, which is what I
Right,
really want to do.
right.
First of all, doing the safaris and seeing those animals that I'd only ever seen as a child in a zoo was just absolutely mind blowing. Like it felt like this out of body experience. I would never, ever, ever forget it. And I think everyone should try and do one. And then the second thing, the produce, the food, like the quality of the food is insane. I started eating meat again after trying a steak
Wow.
in South Africa, and the meat and then the fruits and vegetables are like the most flavorful fruit and vegetables I have ever tried in my life. And that's
Wow.
someone coming from New Zealand where we have amazing produce. And you know, you'll get this stunning, gorgeous meal for about $8 US. So I really want to go back and just eat my
Yeah,
way
well,
around.
maybe after you finish yachting, you could go into guide in a
Yes,
safari. You seem
yeah,
thrilled
yeah,
with it. You'd be great. You'd be
exactly. Oh,
absolutely great.
thank you.
How about Morocco?
Oh my
To be.
goodness. I have just gotten back from Morocco about 2 weeks ago, and I was blown away. I wasn't quite sure what to expect. It's just such a different culture and such a different religion and all of this kind of thing. But I went there, and the thing that stuck with me the most was the people. They are the most welcoming, kind, lovely people ever. And that, you know, the indigenous people there, they were saying that they believe that Morocco is a country that is meant for all peoples. It's not just meant for them, it's meant for everyone. And so when they see visitors coming, they really do welcome you with open arms. And it doesn't feel like put on to get you to spend money or anything. They're just so proud that
Yeah,
you've
I
come
think
to their
that's very
country.
important. I think that's
Yeah,
important to say because we hear about the beauty of Morocco. In episode 24, we focused on Morocco, and the
yeah,
people are a part of it. I don't hear that all the
oh,
time, but I agree with you 100%. Wonderful people.
yeah.
South Africa, by the way, we focused on episode 101. All of these places you're mentioning, we have done a whole piece on them. New York City, you
Awesome.
love New York City. What
I
about it?
do. I just find it so magical. You know, it's one of those places where growing up, it was just this whole other world that only really existed in movies. And you grow up watching Friends and Sex in the City, and they show like Central Park. And I remember my first time going into New York City, I was working on a super yacht with my sister, and we were standing on the bow, and we got to enter New York City on the front of this super yacht, and we've got the Statue of Liberty going past us. And my sister and I just had our arms around each other, bawling our eyes out because we couldn't believe it. And I remember walking around it, and I was like, man, every single thing that people have said about this place is true. Because often it's really overstated and you're like, oh, it's not that great. But I was like, wow, it's magic. And when you're in Manhattan, I love that every single block there is a feast for the eyes. You know, every single block that you walk down, it's like people watching. What's that restaurant? What's that shop? There's just so much to take in, and I love that.
The energy,
Yes,
which
I
you
love it.
have.
I
You
love
have
it.
it.
Yeah,
That's your
thank
energy. Have you
you.
been back recently?
Yes,
And
so
do people
Scott,
recognize you? I'm just curious. New Yorkers are the type that say, "Hi, Aisha." Just yell it out.
all the time,
Yeah,
all the time.
yeah.
Scott's sister works there, a bar there. I like to go there to see her and have some girl time.
Sounds great. You have a nice variety. You love London as well, a little bit different, but
Yes.
also full of its own energy.
I just love England in general because I'm someone that's very sentimental. I love nostalgia and all of that. And I love that when you're in England as a whole, it feels like you're walking through a calendar, like that cute little photo on a calendar. But I'm always at my granny's house or something, like sitting with her and having a cup of tea. And because my granny is British, it just fills me with so much joy, the culture and the tradition there. And when you're in London, I love the little pubs and it's gloomy outside and you can have some bangers and mash and a beer, and I just love everything
You
about
love
it.
life.
Yes, I
You
do.
do. I'm so happy to see that because I figured you did. We mentioned all of this in episode 87 on London. And of course, we do an episode on New Zealand. Of course, we do episode
Oh,
28 on that. I'm sure you love your home country. It's one of my favorites in the whole world. So I have to tell you that I love it.
I'm so
Very,
pleased. What
very.
what is your favorite place there?
Oh my goodness, the beauty of the South Island, of course, but all of it. Just the people.
Mm.
Again, we're going to go back to that.
Yeah.
It's got everything. The food's delicious, the wine is great, the people are great, the scenery is fantastic, the cities are wonderful, the culture. Yeah, you come from a great place.
You covered it all. You covered it all. I couldn't agree more.
Well, that's what I do. So, the name of the podcast is Places I Remember. So, Aisha, with all your many experiences around the world, would you please share one personal memory with us of your travel?
One of my favorite memories of all of my travels, all of my yachting life was when I was working on this boat called Phoenix 2. It's like a 96-meter super yacht. It's massive. There's about 30 to 35 crew on there at one time. And I remember we were right at the end of a really intense season. It was like 3 months straight of just like I hadn't stepped foot off the boat for 3 months. It was every single
Where
day.
were
Work, work,
you?
work. We were in the Med and then we crossed the Atlantic and then we'd been in Florida. Then we went down to the Caribbean. It was right at the end. We ended up, the guests wanted to go down to Cuba. And so we pulled into Havana and the guests declared that they were going to go. They're like, no, we're actually going to go off and go to some other place on land for like 3 days. And so the captain said that all of the crew can have the next day off and that they've organized a surprise for us in Havana. So we get all dressed up and get all ready, step off the port, and we come out into the street. And there are these three big buses there. And we were like, oh, what's happening? There's like buses here. Are these for us? And the purser comes out and she's like, no, 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 this isn't it. And I don't know if this was planned or not, but it was like this dream, like the home edition of like Dream Makeover or whatever, when they're like, move that bus. And the buses suddenly all shifted. And behind the bus was these 10 gorgeous, shining Cadillacs all lined up in a row. And she's like, these are for you guys. And we're like, ah! So we all sprint towards these Cadillacs and we're like sitting up on the back seat, cruising around Havana, the wind blowing in our hair, just feeling like it was the most magical experience I've ever had. They ended up taking us to Tropicana, which was, the old cabaret where like Frank Sinatra went there, Marilyn Monroe, and they got us these like the best tables in the house at the very front with like cigars and all you could drink. And I just remember that night feeling so unreal. I couldn't believe that this was my life and this was happening to me. And if it wasn't for yachting, I never would have experienced that. And I'll always be so grateful for that experience.
Oh, it sounds fabulous. I hope there are so many more of those for you, and I'm sure there will be. I'm
Thank
delighted.
you.
I'm delighted I had a chance to ask you some questions. I've been a longtime fan of your show and of you. You work hard, you have fun, and you lead with kindness. And we all need
Oh,
to do
thank
just
you.
that because
It
whether we're traveling or at home, kindness counts. So thank you,
does.
Scott, and I'll be watching you on Below Deck. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me. You're absolutely delightful.
Thank Thanks for listening to our award-winning podcast. We've recorded over 100 episodes of Places I Remember, so follow us on any podcast app. And new monthly episodes are also on YouTube with gorgeous video. My book, Places I Remember, is available in print and Kindle, and I read the audio version. Follow my travel writing at Forbes.com. Contact me at the links in the show notes or on my website, placesirememberlealane.com, and keep making your own travel memories.